Is anybody really on our side? As rank and file Americans who are going to work and just trying to get by day to day, we keep seeing these politicians, we keep seeing these rich elites. Some of them seem to be fighting for us supposedly, but then we just see them turn around and say some of the most insane things. And it's hard to look at Washington, D.C. and see anybody who really seems to be supporting us, who really seems to have the idea of the principles of being a public servant. We just had Donald Trump come out this week, and he was bragging about Operation Warp Speed with the whole Pokies. And, that was not one of his brightest shining moments, where he was duped by the entire industry, right? And I know a lot of us are pretty sore about that, and it just seems extremely, tone deaf to go out there and start bragging about that stuff when it's like, didn't you learn your lesson? Like, don't you realize that was a mistake? That was one of the biggest catastrophes in modern human history, right? That was one of the absolute worst programs and just everything about how it was run, how it was forced on people, how all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that means I'm going to be doing a different voting pattern or something like that. I'm just saying, as we look to these people in Washington, D.C., or the people that are running for offices, we have to remember, in the end, the people that run for those offices represent themselves, ultimately. They don't represent us. Some try to do a good job representing us. Some don't care at all, of course. You see that for sure, and that comes through loud and clear. But my point is anyone really going to save us? We see the problems out there. We see the inflation problems. We see the out-of-control spending. We see the billions and hundreds of billions of dollars of United States money going to all sorts of other countries and other places that hate our guts. And you can just see with the deal that was just made to avert the government shutdown, how many people here on this channel wanted to see the government shutdown? Like, when you really think about it, like, wouldn't that have been a good thing? The government that is oppressing us, having that, it doesn't actually shut down. It just goes into a less dangerous mode, right? They do less work, and they do less oppressing of us. And yet, our esteemed colleagues and our esteemed representatives who are supposedly with us went out there and all voted for this abomination that's going to kick the can down the road until September. We're spending so much money, an insane amount of money. We have every department in the government doing the exact opposite of what it's supposed to be doing, right? We have the IRS not collecting money, but targeting political opponents. We have the Customs and Border Patrol agents who are ferrying around their Uber drivers for people who have illegally crossed the border. They ferry them to temporary housing where they document them and process them and give them free stuff. And then they drive them to another city and let them go. It's like you don't even have to walk across the border anymore. You have to walk across the border to get picked up, get into the Customs and Border Patrol van, where they then drive you deeper into the United States, give you free stuff, and then they release you into the United States with paperwork saying that you have 5 years in the United States to work and to enjoy yourself before you will face a hearing to see whether you need to be actually deported or not. If that sounds reasonable to you, that the border guards are helping people illegally cross the border, this is upside down world. I've said it many times. The U.S. Department of Defense does anything but defend the United States. All it does is attacks other countries. Let's get a map out, and I will show you conclusively, we don't defend the United States. We attack other countries with our... Where are our boats? Are they patrolling the U.S. coastline? No, they're not. Are the U.S. borders being protected by the U.S. military, the Department of Defense? Are they there to defend the border? Nope. No, they're not. Nope. Nope. They're defending New York City subways by looking into people's bags, but they're not defending the border. I mean, that would be unconstitutional, right? According to some people. But deploying them to walk around with weapons in the New York subways is okay. But, doing unlawful searches of people's personal effects. But I digress. Basically, all of our government agencies do the exact opposite. Department of Education, are they educating people, or are they meddling with the education of children in order to force agendas down the throats so that they don't actually learn to read, they don't actually learn to do math, right? They don't learn the basic things of education that is needed for them to be in the workforce. They're learning woke ideologies and X nationality history month and X Pride month and all these things. They're learning everything but the basics of education. And this is being forced by our Department of Education, which should be renamed as Department of or Uneducation or De-education or Re-education. Re-education, I like that one. And our Department of Defense should be renamed Department of Attack. And our FBI and the Department of Justice should be renamed Department of Injustice. If President Trump gets into office, that should be his first order of business. He should rename all of the departments accurately. that would be something. That should be the first executive order that happens right there. But do we have people that are going to come fix these problems for us? Now, there's some good people in the mix. I think Donald Trump is really honestly trying to help, and some of you don't agree with me on that one, but I think he is legitimately trying to help. I think that there are congressional leaders that are trying to help. I think that there are a couple senators that are trying to help. But all that to say, are they really going to save us? I know a whole bunch of people got really excited about the truckers going and boycotting New York City. We're like, yeah, the truckers, they're going to pay the high price. They're going to make the sacrifices necessary to secure our freedom. And friends, that's not how this is going to go down. When this happens, it's going to require sacrifices from all of us. And it's not going to be some glorious politician that's going to come shining through the sky and step out and make everything right again. Take us back to 1776. That's not how it's going to work. I was doing humanitarian work in Central Asia with a number of people, and one of the people was this South African guy. And he said something as I was complaining. I was repeating a bunch of the complaints that the locals had about the central government of that country, how corrupt and evil it was, which is, let's just say, back then it was on a different level than the United States. Now it's kind of like, starting to sound a little more like the United States today. Anyway, he said, the people get the government they deserve. The people get the government that they deserve. So friends, when we look at Washington, D.C., as Americans, we actually need to realize that we're looking in a mirror. Now, I realize that that abomination in Washington, D.C. is, we'd like to tell ourselves that's the mirror of the cities. That's the mirror of, but it's really the mirror of the United States. It's the truth. The corruption and the stuff that's going on there in those dual chambers is the same kind of stuff that if you start walking down your street or if you go into town where you are and you were to just like a ghost go through the walls and see what's going on in those different homes, I promise you, you would be astonished and you would be deeply troubled. I did an internship with a city near here, and I did some time in the police department where I was actually typing up officers' notes from the police department, and I was typing up their shifts of their reports of what happened. And that was eye-opening. That was eye-opening to see the kind of garbage that the police officers have to deal with day in, day out in an urban setting, and how they have to return back to the same locations again and again, and how the situations become escalated. The life decisions that the people that they interact with are making. We are a degenerate society. As much as we like to pretend we're not, as much as we like to still have the trappings of our old society where we actually had morals and values, friends, it's all but gone. And you know what I'm talking about. I look at the demographics of my channel, and I know a lot of you are 40 and up, for sure. And so you remember how things once were, and it's not that way anymore. By and large, those are not the values. Freedom is no longer the most cherished and value of the United States. Safety has become the most cherished value. And we need to protect people from words. We need to protect them from dangers. We need to protect them from, people on the other side of the planet that don't like us. We need to go over there and attack them before they could maybe do something to us. But we'll let millions of them come across, into our country without any kind of checks at all. That makes sense somehow. But we do not believe in the things we once did. You go to Washington, D.C., and these guys and gals don't believe the things that we do. I don't know about you, but as I watched clips of the State of the Union, I watched the State of the Union. I'm like that. I know. One of the things that really hit me was how friendly everybody in Congress was with each other. Oh, we see all the news clips where they start shouting at each other and they're calling each other names and they're like, we will never compromise. But then it's like they always compromise. And when you see like a State of the Union, you see them, mortal enemies shaking hands and smiling at each other. And it's just like, it's just like Hollywood, it's all an act. They're not really concerned about us. They're just acting concerned about us so that they can get reelected. And that's the troubling truth. When it really comes down to it, change is going to happen in the United States when we all make our own share of the sacrifices necessary to bring change. It's going to take a mind shift. And really, what's going to happen is, and we can't even force it, right? What's going to happen is there's going to be a moment, something's going to happen, and everything's going to change. Things like don't change for a very long time, and then when they change like that. And when that moment happens, will you be ready? Will you be ready to survive the change? Because it could be pretty brutal. Will your mind be prepared to not be swept up in an emotional tornado? You saw what happened after 9/11. You saw what happened in the lead up to the Iraq War. People got stirred up into a frenzy. You got told all sorts of things, and because everybody agreed on them, nobody asked the questions that should have been asked. And when the United States gets whipped up into a frenzy, when other countries get whipped up into a frenzy, it's very easy to get sucked into that. Are you mentally going to be prepared to have a little bit of skepticism when that ship gets blown out of the water? We got sucked into Vietnam, right? Gulf of Tonkin? Yep. We know that was fake now, don't we? We know the Lusitania that drew us into World War I? Yeah, apparently it was carrying weapons. It was a legitimate military target. Nobody wanted to ask questions about that. What about the Maine, right? Drew us in the Spanish-American War. You go back and you just look at through history and see how many times events were staged or they weren't in the depths of them what they appeared to be on the surface. And everyone just takes the surface level and goes, we should get mad about that and we should go do something about that. Turns out later, the actions that were taken were not justified. And yet, when you're on the winning side of things, it's fine. Or when you're, thousands and thousands of miles away from the conflict zone, it's fine. Or it seems fine, right? And that's how the United States has gotten by, is we can have defeats as long as the defeats are over on another continent. But when it happens here, it's going to feel very differently. It's going to feel a lot closer to us. That's why 9/11 felt so visceral for so many people. It's because it was near to us. It was close to us. It hit home. And when the events that happen in the near future, they're probably going to happen here at home. Sure, we could get sucked into World War III, but half of our country hates the other half of the country. And that's just a simple fact. A large portion of the country, if they saw somebody from the wrong party, the wrong political persuasion, in desperate trouble, they'd watch them. And you know what I'm saying is true. If you're the wrong skin color these days, if you are of the wrong, if you're wearing the wrong hat, if you have the wrong yard sign, everything is justified against you, apparently. Change is going to have to come. And when it does, the whole world will change. And it will look completely different. And the rules will be different. They'll be scary. And safety won't be assured anymore. Hard times are coming, friends. Hard times are coming. The biggest thing you can do, and I repeat this ad nauseum, is to stock up on food. Get into a good place where you are with housing. Stock up on food will give you a lot of options in a crisis. I've seen this overseas in the conflict zones I've been in. You'll do just about anything for food for your family. And that becomes the most important thing. All right, friends, do what you can out there. Be thinking about things and getting more prepared. Because when that day comes, you're going to walk into the crisis with the person you are. Whether you've prepared or not, you won't be able to race and prepare at the very last second like you think you will. You'll be caught up in it as well. All right, friends, don't get doom and gloomy, but just realize things are changing, and now is the time to take prudent steps. Take steps every day, whether they're baby steps or big steps, whatever. But just move forward, because it will give you a sense of power and purpose in the midst of a crisis if you are not nearly as surprised and not nearly as unprepared as the people around you. All right, friends, if you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report.